Sorry, I was turning something off. Um, Today is June 15th, 2017. Just felt like saying the date because, I don't know, I'm cataloging this stuff now. But I was brought to a point of serious consideration when I sat by myself listening to some classic tunes. And I thought about these different relationship videos that I've made. And in particular, I thought about the negative perception that I was expecting upon making the first one. What was that, 18 months ago? But that realization of this not being as negatively received as I thought it would be only came after I just asked myself, why do I consider it such a bad thing to speak openly about an area of life in which I would want to see an improvement? And as I was sitting here and thinking to myself more and more, I realized that relationships, dating, who you're with, who you're not with, who you've tried to be with, who you've been rejected by, what you felt, those are all topics that are so taboo and are just perceived as should be kept on a hush hush basis. If a woman is open about the number of guys that she's been with, and it's, I guess, more than two or three, and she's, not under 40, she is sometimes considered to be promiscuous or otherwise loose, which I don't believe your number of partners, especially if it's that low given your age, would even lead one to that consideration. Meanwhile, if a man talks about all the different women that he's been with, he would be considered a player and just on top of his game. Um, and I get that contradiction, but it also feels that whenever a male who is of an older age um, is not open about what's happened to them in the past with relationships, and they're not married or they don't have kids, or some other sign of proof that they have been intimate with a woman, there's this allegation of homosexuality. You look at I give him a lot of crap because I think he deserves it, but you look at New Jersey Senator Cory Booker, and he was apparently perceived as being gay by voters and other people who didn't know him personally because he wasn't married and because he was childless. Now, he later opened up and said, hey, I haven't found the right partner. But I thought to myself as I read that, it's sad that he has to share this about himself, and we can't just assume that, he doesn't really care. Um, and that's what makes it all the more disturbing, because we get to a certain age and people just expect you to have gone through things with the opposite sex. At this, age of 30 or 40, you should either be married or have, I don't know, some kids or what. They think uh, these particular patterns are what everyone should be because that's how they are. A lot of the people that I heard making the allegation toward him that were in their 30s and 40s, were married and had families and all that jazz. But it's also goes back to my point of, he had to open up about it, and even in the way he opened up, it was, you could kind of tell, given that short answer, he just wants to get it out of the way. And it saddens me that someone in any field, whether they be, you look at Tom Cruise, that, I forget what the publication was, they accused him of only being married to ignore his supposed, to try and brush away whatever his true sexuality was, and he was able to successfully sue them for that nonsense. Uh, and it's sad to me that in any field, whether you be an actor or, as Booker is, a politician, anything that makes you a public figure, you automatically have your life scrutinized and people making these claims against you. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with your whatever your sexuality is, but it shouldn't be what someone is thinking of when they see you give a speech on Capitol Hill, or they see you in The Mummy, in Cruise's case. So then we go back to this idea that now we have to just be open and honest about, as I've been. I've expressed all the various times I have made an attempt toward, I guess, appealing to the opposite sex repeatedly in the past. And it's not really something I look at with a sense of, I don't want to say embarrassment or sadness, because I tried for years. I would go and just, you go to the mall, you go to these different websites, you just, any facility that was available to me, I used it. And I think I did it in a decent way. I would state what I felt. Person says no, person declines, person gives you a number, and then within days says don't call me anymore, text me anymore. Just, I did what I felt all I could do, or what I felt was all I could do. And I keep trying to explain this to people when they ask, why haven't you this, why haven't you? You can't make people like you, especially not be romantically interested in you. I am 6'2". I'm in no way overweight. Um, I I guess I generally keep in shape. I don't know what else is so enticing to women, and I've spoken to male and females about the different strategies, and I always hear this constant thing of, okay, well, every woman is different, but then you'll have someone say women are like the every woman is different, oh, women are like everyone is, just back and forth. You're getting these mixed signals, and then you'll think to yourself, yeah, they probably all are different, but the problem is, for as different as they seem to be, you get the same result with each one of them. The only difference is their name, where I met them, where they ended it, the year, how long it lasted, the courting process, and the day that they did it. So I just take it with a grain of salt. Um, and it's even more agonizing to admit to it, because people do have this idea in the back of their heads that you are someone who must be defined by your relationships with other people. You can have this full body of work and graduate from, I don't know, some prestigious school, and have some very decent job, and do charitable efforts, and just seem to be a decent person, but they'll always ask themselves, what about his love life? What about his love life? What about his love life? And I really, honestly and truthfully, don't see that being questioned about women. And I know there are some who that is done to, but it's still just too often phrased toward men. And I'm not trying to sound as if I'm some patriarch supporter, but I am suggesting that the longer you go without one, the more people expect and want out of your answers. I feel as if in this current state, people, well, that's the state I'm in, but rather the state of society, people would be more interested in, if you're, say, a male celebrity, who you've been with, rather than what movies you were in, how'd you get the role, how'd you feel about the role, what you did to prepare for the role, what your coworkers had to say about you, co-stars. Just, we don't have an interest in the facts of anyone's life anymore, barring who they were with. And when that happens, you start seeing this idea that we need to shut off ourselves from each other, and pretend this is all this person means. That's why in that one documentary I watched, this man mentioned how at the Clinton Library you had little kids lining up to see the pen that, it had something to do with Lewinsky. But the point is, this man's in office for 8 years, and all you can talk about is who he was with as opposed to his wife. I know some people who the only thing they could tell you about Clinton is that he played the saxophone and was involved with a White House intern. That is it. They couldn't tell you about the healthcare battle that made him unpopular for 2 years leading up to the Republican Revolution of '94, which saw them sweep up all the different congressional seats. They couldn't tell you about how his administration was the first to go after bin Laden. They couldn't tell you about him, being in favor of the Defense of Marriage Act of '96. Nothing about your life. And then you're gonna say, "Oh, well, this is getting off topic with the why is it taboo to talk about relationships?" Well, it should be taboo to speak about other people's relationships and to inquire about who someone else was with, um, because that shouldn't be what defines a person, especially a public figure whose career spans decades or years. It bothers me so much, this idea that there are some circles of people, such as that website which I refuse to name, that are just going to say, okay, well, forget all of the different views he had on politics, forget that he wrote multiple books, forget that he was speaking about how he felt on certain issues. Let's talk about this woman that just came forward and said that back in 2014 she uh, declined him or whatever. They won't go for anything that matters. Who I was with or who I wasn't with or what reasons were behind that does not affect anyone's life. It does not bring enjoyment, or it shouldn't bring enjoyment to people, and it should really not reflect the entirety of my worth or of the other parties involved. So, with that being said, I want to sign off and say it needs to be taboo to even speak about relationships, at least of people that are still alive, and maybe some deceased individuals too. Because why is that such a big deal? Who cares? If they're an actor, talk about their movies, or a politician, talk about what they did in office. That should be the substance of the debate. That's why I will always have a measure of respect for the Young Turks and any other news station, because you have serious commentators who are worried about the substance of that person and that are not going to go and say, well, when he was married to this actress, just they won't do that, and I'm glad they won't.